December 1944, FIC. When Japanese POW Sergeant Hiroshi Tanaka was transported through an American city at night, he thought the blazing neon signs and floodlit streets were an elaborate form of psychological torture designed to mock Japan's wartime darkness. After 3 years of blackouts and rationing in Imperial Japan, he couldn't comprehend that Americans had so much electricity they used it for pure decoration, until he realized this wasn't cruelty, but a glimpse into a civilization so abundant it could afford to light up the night sky just because it wanted to. But what happens when a prisoner of war discovers that everything his government told him about the enemy was not just wrong, but the complete opposite of reality? December 1944. Japan was dying in darkness. For 3 long years, the island nation had lived under total blackout orders. Windows stayed covered with thick black paper. Streetlights went dark at sunset. Even flashlights were banned after dark. The government said every spark of light would help American bombers find their targets. Sergeant Hiroshi Tanaka knew this darkness well. He grew up in a small farming village on Kyushu Island, where electric lights were rare even in peacetime. His family used candles and oil lamps just like their fathers before them. The brightest light he ever saw was the single bulb that hung in the village temple. But darkness was just one part of Japan's suffering. Rice bowls stayed half empty. Families got 1 small fish per week if they were lucky. Children wore shoes made from tree bark because leather went to the army. Factory workers melted down pots and pans to make bullets. Even wedding rings disappeared into the war machine. The government controlled everything. Neighborhood watch groups checked every house each night. They made sure no one wasted food or spoke against the war. Police arrested people for listening to foreign radio stations. Teachers told children that dying for the emperor was the greatest honor possible. Tanaka believed it all. He flew his Zero fighter plane with pride, knowing he served the divine emperor. American soldiers were demons who tortured prisoners and ate human flesh. This is what every Japanese person learned from birth. Americans were weak and soft, living in fear while Japan's warrior spirit would win the war. Then came that terrible day over the Pacific. American fighters swarmed his plane like angry wasps. Bullets tore through his engine. Black smoke filled his cockpit. The ocean rushed up to meet him as his plane spun toward the waves. His last thought before hitting the water was shame. He had failed his emperor. When he woke up on an American rescue ship, Tanaka expected immediate torture. Instead, a Navy doctor bandaged his burns and gave him hot soup. American sailors watched him with curious eyes, but showed no hatred. This confused him deeply. Where was the cruelty he had been promised? The transport truck that carried him to the prisoner camp drove through the night. Other captured Japanese pilots sat beside him, all silent and scared. They had heard terrible stories about American prison camps. Work until death, starvation, beatings every day. As the truck rounded a hill, bright lights suddenly blazed through the canvas cover. Tanaka peered through a gap and gasped. The entire valley below glowed like daylight. Neon signs flashed red and blue and yellow. Streetlights lined every road. Even small houses had lights in every window. His fellow prisoners stared in shock. One whispered, "They must be trying to blind us." Another said, "It's torture, designed to hurt our eyes." But Tanaka felt something different stirring in his chest, a terrible question he dared not speak aloud. If Americans could waste this much electricity on mere decoration, what else had his government told him that might be completely wrong? The prison camp gates opened to reveal another shock. Hot water poured from shower heads in a building made just for washing. Tanaka had not felt warm water on his skin in 2 years. Back home, his family heated 1 small pot of water each week for the entire household. Here, American guards told prisoners to shower every single day. The sleeping barracks had real beds with thick mattresses and clean sheets. Each prisoner got his own blanket made of soft wool. Windows had glass that let in light but kept out cold wind. A heating system pumped warm air through metal pipes in the walls. Tanaka's village home had paper walls and no heat except a small fire pit that barely warmed one room. But the mess hall brought the greatest amazement. 3 times each day, prisoners lined up with metal trays. American cooks served portions that would feed a Japanese family for an entire day. Thick slices of beef appeared on plates, along with white bread, fresh vegetables, and sweet butter. Tanaka watched in disbelief as some prisoners ate only half their food and threw the rest away. He remembered his little sister back home. She had grown thin and weak, eating nothing but rice mixed with sawdust. Their mother watered down soup to make it last longer. His father gave up his own portion so the children could eat. Yet here, enemy prisoners received more food than Japanese generals. One morning, a red truck rumbled through the camp gates. Bold white letters spelled out Coca-Cola on its side. American soldiers unloaded cases of dark bottles filled with sweet liquid. Guards handed bottles to prisoners along with their regular meals. Tanaka sipped the fizzy drink and tasted more sugar than his family had seen in months. The truck driver smiled and said the company made millions of these bottles every single day. The camp hospital shocked him most of all. When Tanaka's burns became infected, American doctors treated him with the same care they gave their own wounded soldiers. They used expensive medicines that Japan could no longer make. A nurse checked on him twice each day and changed his bandages with gentle hands. She spoke softly and asked if he felt pain. Work details took prisoners to nearby factories where they helped make airplane parts. Tanaka saw machines that could shape metal with perfect precision. Assembly lines moved finished products at amazing speed. One factory produced more engines in a week than all of Japan made in a month. Workers took breaks every few hours and ate lunch from metal boxes filled with sandwiches and fruit. American guards often shared cigarettes with prisoners during rest periods. They showed photographs of their families and spoke about homes with electric refrigerators and automobiles. Some had traveled to many different states just for vacation. The idea of traveling for fun seemed impossible to Tanaka. In Japan, people needed special papers just to visit the next town. Each night, lying in his warm bed with a full stomach, Tanaka wrote in a small notebook the guards had given him. His thoughts grew more troubled with each passing day. If Americans treated their enemies this well, what did that say about the great Japanese empire that could barely feed its own people? Christmas morning 1944 arrived with snow falling softly on the camp. Tanaka woke expecting another ordinary day, but American guards wore excited smiles as they unlocked the barracks doors. They announced that Christmas was their most important holiday, a time for celebrating peace and showing kindness to all people, even enemies. The mess hall had been decorated with green trees, covered in sparkling lights, and colorful glass balls. Red and green cloth hung from the ceiling. The smell of roasted turkey filled the air, mixed with sweet spices Tanaka had never encountered. Long tables groaned under the weight of more food than he had seen in his entire life. Whole turkeys sat golden brown beside mountains of white potatoes swimming in rich gravy. Sweet pies lined one entire table, their crusts perfectly baked and filled with apples and cherries. But the prisoners were not the only guests. American families from the nearby town had driven through the snow to visit the camp. Mothers carried wrapped packages, while fathers shook hands with guards they knew by name. Children pressed their faces against windows, waving at the Japanese prisoners with innocent curiosity instead of fear or hatred. One little girl with yellow hair approached Tanaka's table. She held out a small wrapped box and spoke words he could not understand. A guard translated that she wanted to give him a Christmas present. Inside the box lay a hand-carved wooden bird, painted bright blue with tiny details on its wings. The child had made it herself in school, spending weeks learning how to use carving tools just to give a gift to an enemy prisoner. Tanaka felt something crack inside his chest. His hands trembled as he held the tiny bird. In Japan, children learned that Americans were demons who ate babies and burned temples. Yet this innocent child had spent her own time making something beautiful for a man whose country had tried to kill her father and brothers. An elderly American woman sat beside him and spoke through the translator. She said her son was fighting somewhere in the Pacific, maybe dead or captured by Japanese forces. She hoped that if he was a prisoner, some kind family would show him the same love she wanted to show Tanaka today. Tears ran down her weathered cheeks as she placed her wrinkled hand over his. That night, Tanaka wrote in his notebook with shaking fingers, "Today I learned the greatest lie of my life. We were told that strength comes from suffering, that victory requires hatred, that our enemies were monsters without hearts. But these people who could destroy us completely choose instead to feed us, heal us, and even love us. Their power comes not from cruelty, but from having so much abundance they can afford to be generous even to those who tried to kill them." He stared at the wooden bird sitting on his bedside table. If everything I believed about Americans was wrong, what else did my government lie about? What kind of nation did I really serve? And what kind of nation captured me? The foundations of his entire world had crumbled in a single day. August 1946. The ship carrying Tanaka and other former prisoners docked in Yokohama Harbor. 2 years had passed since Japan surrendered, but the country still lay in ruins. Bombed buildings stood like broken teeth against the gray sky. The air smelled of smoke and decay instead of the fresh ocean breeze he remembered from his childhood. His family waited on the dock, but he barely recognized them. His father had aged 20 years in 3. His mother's hair had turned completely white. His little sister, once plump and laughing, now stood thin as a stick with hollow eyes that seemed too big for her face. They wore clothes patched with scraps of different colors because new fabric did not exist. Tanaka carried a canvas bag filled with gifts from America. Chocolate bars wrapped in shiny paper, bars of white soap that smelled like flowers, cigarettes in perfect packages. A small radio that could pick up stations from around the world. These simple items were treasures beyond price in devastated Japan. Walking through Tokyo felt like moving through a graveyard. Entire neighborhoods had vanished, leaving only concrete foundations and twisted metal beams. People lived in shacks built from scraps of wood and metal sheets. Children with dirty faces begged for food on street corners. The lucky ones had jobs clearing rubble for a handful of rice each day. His family's house had burned in the firebombing raids. They now lived in 2 small rooms with paper walls so thin that every sound from neighboring families could be heard clearly. At night, they shared one thin blanket and shivered together for warmth. The single electric bulb hanging from the ceiling worked only a few hours each day when power was available. Tanaka gave his family the chocolate and watched their faces light up with wonder. His sister bit into a piece and smiled for the first time since his return. She said it tasted like happiness itself. His mother cried as she held the soap, saying she had forgotten that such luxuries could exist. But the real treasure Tanaka brought home could not be touched or eaten. During the long nights when hunger kept his family awake, he told them stories of America. He described cities that never went dark, where neon signs painted the sky in rainbow colors. He spoke of factories that produced more goods in one day than Japan made in a month. Most importantly, he told them about people who chose kindness over cruelty, even toward their enemies. His sister listened with wide eyes and asked, "Will Japan ever be like America?" Tanaka pulled out the wooden bird the little American girl had carved for him. He had carried it through 2 years of captivity and across the Pacific Ocean. Now, it sat on their makeshift table like a symbol of hope. "The war taught me that real strength is not about how much you can suffer," he whispered. "True power comes from building a society so rich and confident that it can afford to be generous even to those who tried to destroy it. Someday, Japan will learn this lesson too."